Sneegsnag.
My dick's tiny!
Sneeg is a variety streamer over on Twitch who I've been watching for about 4 years now, and I find him quite funny.
Penis.
So about 2 or 3 years ago, he actually opened a P.O. box, and I sent in some enamel pins that I had designed and a letter. And while it had a little doodle on it, I kind of felt bad I didn't send in any actual fan art. So to rectify this, now that he has a new P.O. box, I was racking my brain as to what I could make. And then I realized I want to get into Linocut printing. That's printing with linoleum. And I needed some practice. So why not use this fan art as a chance to practice? I figure I should explain what Linocut is. So Linocut, or linoleum block printing, is a method of relief printmaking where you take a slab of linoleum and you carve it. Now, linoleum, commonly used in flooring, is soft enough to carve quite easily, but sturdy enough to hold a line even if it's like carved on either side and is quite thin. And so when you carve away the linoleum, that is where your paper will show through, and whatever you leave is where the ink will be deposited onto the paper. And while this isn't a tutorial, I do hope you get a general sense of how Linocut works from this video. So I decided to work digitally to actually design the piece, just because it allows me to add in different elements, move them around, kind of take things away very easily. But I actually settled on the aesthetic I wanted for this quite quickly. I wanted a very gestury type aesthetic, just because I think, one, it fits Sneeg quite well, and two, it harkens back to medieval wood block prints, which I thought was quite neat and kind of is a precursor to Linocut prints. And so you'll see I kind of settle on these three elements: the hammer, Sneeg himself, and the spade quite easily. I try adding legs at one point, does not work out, but I do add in the cool S. I try adding in Sneegsnag as a little marker or something like that, but it doesn't work out as well. But you'll see that I actually line this quite thickly, with 2 lines eventually filling them in. That's because cutting and carving the linoleum, it can hold a thin line, but it's just harder to cut that precisely. And so I just end up with these thick, really cool lines that I think will print really well and look really nice. Alright, so I didn't film a couple of the steps. I already have the image transferred onto the lino, just because it's very tedious, but I can show you what I did. So I have these little printouts of the design. This is not the one I used, this is just the backup one I had, but I do have this. This is the one that I used. You can see I went over it in pencil, and then I taped it down to the lino, and then rubbed it with this, I think it's technically a kitchen tool, rubbed it so the graphite would transfer onto here. But I'll show you this. I went over it in Sharpie just because the graphite will obviously rub off at some point. So it's a little bit different than the actual design, but that's largely okay, because one, it's not a million times different, and two, just because it's different, that's kind of what I want. If I wanted just this image, I would just print out this image and send that in, but no, I want a Linocut print. And so it's time for the most interesting part of this, which is the carving of the linoleum. I'll do a little voiceover with my thoughts and kind of process with this, but yeah, let's get to carving. And so I started with the border, which honestly made the most mess as it was the most surface area I was carving out, but a lot of the detail work was harder and took more time, I think. I did end up doing the easiest parts first, which was pretty smart because it got me back in kind of the swing of carving the linoleum. But you'll see that I do mess up the hood, kind of the trail of it. The hardest part was probably the hammer and the face. And the hammer just, it was a mess. But the face, I ended up scrapping the beard because it just did not look right and it was very hard to carve. But overall, I'm actually really happy with how this came out. It did have the kind of organic carved look that I was going for, but all that's left to do is ink it up and print. Alright, time for the messy bit, but luckily for me, this ink is actually seaweed based and cleans up with just soap and water. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to warm up the ink. And to do that, I get a little bit on here and I just go in like an M pattern. And I'm listening for a specific noise that the ink makes. I'm looking, it's almost like a Velcro noise. Some people say it sounds like the ocean. I think it sounds like Velcro. And so after warming up the ink, I coat the linoleum in the ink. And then I do a couple of test prints on this white paper. I used multimedia paper, which is not what you're supposed to use, but it's what I had on hand. And the first test print actually turned out good for a first print. I ended up doing 4 test prints in total, and I used them to see where I still needed to carve away or press harder. Alright, well this is the final test print. We'll see how well it turns out. Pretty good, I do like it. I really like how these test prints came out. I think they just, the blue was a very good choice here. So I do have 3 pieces of this paper. We'll see how well it prints. I'm not exactly sure how well it's gonna go. Now, I try to be eco-friendly, and there is a creative reuse store, which is like a crafting thrift store near me, and that's where I got this paper. And I thought it would be fine for printing, but it turns out textured paper, not great for Linocut. And so the actual print did not turn out to my liking, and so I just kind of decided then and there I was not going to use this paper, which means I needed to find something else to print on. So I left off this project for a couple hours just to kind of think through kind of the problem that I have, which is the paper that I wanted to use is too textured. And I came up with a couple different solutions. The one that I'm going to try primarily is going to use fabric. So I think this ink will work with fabric. It dries via absorption. So actually some of the test prints on paper are not dry yet because it hasn't absorbed all the way. So we're going to try that. We're going to try the fabric printing. Now, I was really unsure if this fabric would work at all, but I figured I might as well try it. Alright, I haven't worked with fabric in Linocut before, but I'm just going to drape it on. See how that works. Well, I guess the only thing to do is lift it off. Oh! Not bad. I ended up really liking this kind of test print I did on the fabric. Like, it's messy, but there was something there. There was something that said that, like, hey, this is actually pretty viable. And so I draped my other piece of fabric onto the Linocut, pressed it, rubbing with the scuba weight. The only thing I really had to, like, rub the Linocut, and you'll see. That's pretty good. And looking at it, I was surprised. I actually really liked how it turned out. You know, is this our finish one? So, my crazy fabric plan worked. Oh, I have to see if it dries. But the idea is I don't know what I'll turn this into. I could sew it to something, make it look like something. I don't know. We'll see what I do with this. And so I ended up sewing it to a piece of felt to kind of make it thicker and more substantial. But from there, I decided to decorate, and so you'll see it in the reveal.
That. That's wild. That's very cool, dude.
This is like, and this is fabric. I mean, that's the craziest part about that is this is done within the fabric itself. Wow. This is awesome, dude. Thank you.
Alright, wrap up time. So I ended up adding a bit of fabric paint and some beads and buttons to the little scrap of fabric, turning it into like a little wall hanging as you saw. And I think it is very me. It is very much a hodgepodge, eclectic kind of thing. Is it Sneeg style? Probably not. But this is, something I made and I like, so I hope he at least kind of respects the effort put into it, which I'm sure he does. But regardless, I hope you enjoyed this little process making video. It was weird that it took some twists and turns, but I had fun. So, thanks. Bye-bye.